Why, hello, learning nerds. Before we begin today's show, I want to thank our awesome sponsors, with first giving a shout out to Idle Courses Academy. Idle Academy is the first and only authorized vocational school for instructional design and online learning. It includes a comprehensive hands-on curriculum with certifications, credentials, expert coaches, mentors, a community of practice, paid experience opportunities, industry-preferred software access, live events, and ongoing updates. Your entire instructional design career is neatly packaged behind a single login for just $88 a month. Check out all the details at idlecourses.com/academy, and you can use my code Luke for $88 off the yearly membership. This show is also brought to you by Instructional Design Institute. If you are looking to learn more about instructional design from a higher education perspective, the Institute is for you. This is our 7-week-long instructional design boot camp to be able to teach you about really everything from A to Z as far as from an instructional design higher education perspective. We're going to be starting off first of talking about with andragogy, how adults learn, to talking about conducting research, to then being able to design learning experiences for everybody, with the end of a 7-week program allowing you to be able to create your own type of learning experience that you can use for a portfolio. You'll also be receiving a free copy of my ebook, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer, as well as is that I will be leaving you feedback on your assignments along with the community, the peer feedback, and of course, I'm going to be hosting weekly live workshops of talking more about the different types of topics for each week. We've had students go through the programs who work at Johns Hopkins University, University of Alabama, Southern Hampshire University, University of Florida, and many more. So whether you're an aspiring instructional designer and you want to learn more about what it's like to be an instructional designer within a higher education organization, or you are currently an instructional designer and you're looking to be able to get some feedback, some guidance, and being able to go back and transform your learning experiences for your university or your college or your institution, check out Instructional Design Institute. You can go down below inside of the show notes to click on the link, or of course, you can just Google Instructional Design Institute and it's going to pop right up. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free, let me know. I'm more than happy to help you out from there. Okay, now let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome back on in to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I am your guide along your instructional design journey, and you can find all the resources that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. Today's episode is going to be a special one because we are going to be chatting with distinguished professor of English and alum of Instructional Design Institute, Stepanie Kratz. I say this is going to be a special episode because it is very timely. This episode is talking all about faculty burnout. We have been talking so much lately about the teacher burnout from K through 12 perspective, but of course, our faculty have been asked to do more than ever, and definitely there have been some kind of crazy things over the last couple of years, and more of our faculty are certainly getting stressed, burning out, and considering other different forms of career paths and options. And this is something that still surprises me to this day, is the amount of professors, tenured faculty members, of those of you who listen to this show who have been reaching out saying that you either want to A, learn more about instructional design, or B, you're considering making this move and trying to be able to make this career change on your own, which is really interesting. It's a very interesting conversation. It's very difficult to be able to say about what someone should do after they have worked for years and years and years to be able to get this type of position, and then now they're thinking, should we be changing things? So this entire conversation with Stepanie is going to be talking all about faculty burnout, how to help, how to prevent, what we can do, talking about designing learning experiences around faculty burnout, professional development opportunities, and a whole lot more. So it's going to be an awesome episode, and I am not going to waste any more time. Here is the one and the only Stepanie Kratz. Stepanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Excellent. I'm good. I'm very glad to be here.
Awesome. Me too. Well, Stepanie, I can't wait to dive on into our conversation. But before I get ahead of myself, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. My name is Stepanie Kratz, and I am Distinguished Professor of English at Heartland Community College, which is in Normal, Illinois, which is a town name that we have lots of fun with. And
I was just going to say, wait, is that real? It's a Normal,
yeah,
Illinois?
great.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a normal library and a normal theater. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
So, yeah, I have been at Heartland for 27 years, and I have taught many different things over the years, but mostly I do composition and some literature classes. Tons of fun. Children's literature. I even get to teach science fiction and fantasy sometimes, which is a blast. I've taught face-to-face and online and hybrid and, all of the iterations of that came when we had the pandemic. I also have worked as coordinator of faculty academies, which essentially is the faculty professional development at Heartland. And we had, I served in that role of a faculty member who has reassignment to then coordinate all those kinds of events. I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, my term was up and I had to step down and pass it on. But gosh, I'm a lifelong learner, honestly. I'm always doing, like the Instructional Design Institute or learning about like how to use 7-taps, just things like that. And yeah, I'm a huge Cubs fan and a Star Wars nerd.
Okay, perfect. So now we're just going to talk about Wrigley Field, and we're going to go and talk about Star Wars movies. That's fine. I mean, by all means, I'm named Luke, so you can probably guess I got this if we're going to be talking about Star Wars for the next hour.
Something tells me you have some experience with this.
I mean, just like slightly. It's only my entire life that I heard a joke that everyone thinks that they're my father, which not true. Only have one dad. But you know what? It's fine. Glad
to. I love that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My entire life. Hey, it's fine. It's fine. The funny thing that I'm not even sure if I've even talked about this on the podcast yet. I don't know how it's possible where if like 80-something episodes, this has not come up yet, but I am positive I was named after Luke Skywalker. My dad is a massive Star Wars fan. I grew up with every Star Wars toy under the sun, and he had Star Wars toys. So like that was like all I played with. However, my mom says I was named after St. Luke. I kind of believe her, but kind of feel like my dad kind of pulled a fast one and was just like, oh, let's just name our kid Luke, because like after the
She
saint.
suggested it and your dad said, sure, that works for me.
Right. He's just like, yeah, that's a good name. That's a good.
I like that.
The only thing as far as for why maybe like not it actually is the thing is that we actually have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the family.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
right.
that gives some credibility to your mom's argument.
So, that religious side of the family, I think we got it down. But you know what? It's fine. Anyway, that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast, Stephanie, is about how the perfect timing, actually, of having you come on the show, because for years, this has kind of surprised me, is that when I think about the audience of folks of who listens to this show and watches us on YouTube and everything else, you think about aspiring instructional designers, current instructional designers, and a couple of other different types of fields. But the one group of people that I keep hearing from more and more and more is actually faculty, instructors, professors, tenured professors. And it's so interesting because I'm shocked about it, but in a good way shocked, where it's just like, you want to know about instructional design? Like that's something you're interested in? Because I felt like for years we were saying, please be interested in this. And they're like, yeah, sounds good. And it kind of got a part of the process where now it feels so different in a good way. So tell me, as someone who is a distinguished professor, what made you be interested in instructional design and wanting to learn more about this?
I think all professors should be interested in instructional design because that's what we do when we create a class. We are helping design a learning experience for students, and our goal is always to focus on the students and delivering the content. Well, what better way to think about that than the principles of instructional design? Working towards a goal, figuring out the most engaging activities to use for students. There are many professors in higher ed who are brilliant, amazing experts in a subject area. However, not many of us have a background in education. K-12 teachers have to have that teaching certificate. They have to have a practicum. That's not true for college professors. And if you've been through a great program, then you've gotten some of that training, but that's not true necessarily of everyone. Or sometimes people don't expect that they will go into teaching, or that, they're coming from industry, or they're coming from a different place and they love their material. And what better people to work with students, but we don't necessarily have that background. So that's what got me there, is I was always thinking about what's the best way to design my courses. For many, many years, I taught mostly English 101 and English 102, general education composition courses that students, for the most part, did not want to be in. And so I'm constantly thinking about, how can I make this fun for them? How can I make this interesting? How can I show them that this is important and will, be a great skill for them to have? So I guess that's really where it came from, is I was trying to figure out how best to engage students and create a fun environment where people can learn.
Oh, I applaud your efforts for that, because it also takes a very reflective person to be able to think about how, because when you think about this entire world that we live in, there is the teaching side, but then there's also the learning side. And yes, they intersect, but at the same time, and this is kind of like the big thing of instructional design, is that we have to do all of this from the back end perspective of designing these meaningful learning experiences where perhaps we are never interacting with our target audience, which is an interesting thing to think about, it being like, I'm not in front of a classroom. I'm behind. You never see me, but I build this to help you learn. But of course, there is that facilitation process. And of course, incorporating more teaching will obviously help with things. So it all goes in together. But to be able to say, I want to learn about both of how to keep on doing this is awesome. And I really, really wish that more people had your mentality. And I think they're getting there. I see this rising.
I do too, and the learning science is a fairly new field. I mean, compared to sort of the traditions that higher education comes from, where coming from sort of the professor on the stage, the sage on the stage, who just imparts wisdom to the students who sit there with this amazingly attentive these faces, and they're just sponges for knowledge. But we've learned so much about how people learn, and to really engage someone in the process of doing something or learning a skill helps them retain it so much better and really learn it, not just learn how to memorize it and say it back for the exam. I think that most people who work in higher education care so much about wanting to help other people. And so we want to do the best we can for our students.
I agree. Was there a certain moment that made you learn about instructional design, whether you heard about it, or was there a certain spark that made you say, what is this field kind of a thing?
I can't. That's a really good question. I don't think that was on your list of questions.
It may have been added later on, or I'm thinking about it right now.
No, that's a really good one. And I don't know that I can pinpoint it. I've always been interested in teaching, and I knew that I wanted to be a teacher for a long time. But I don't know. I guess it's just maybe from going to different conferences and reading a lot about, I used to get journals about teaching English, and that was a very strong focus of my grad program. I went to Illinois State University, and they are known for their education programs. So I don't know if I could pinpoint a moment, though. There must have been something, but I can't think of what it is.
That's fair enough, because most people obviously know about teaching. Like, that's always what you read about, and especially if you're thinking about a career pathway, you're thinking about becoming a professor is always a goal, or a teacher or an instructor. Like, that's always what it is. But to be able to say that you want to become an instructional designer, I think I'm like one of 5 people who had that as a goal. Other than that, that's not a normal thing to be able to do.
What do you want to be when you grow up? A learning designer.
Yeah, no one says that, right? Not many of us who want to be able to say that. But something that I've been finding so interesting is that I keep on talking with folks who are tenured professors or faculty. They've been doing this for a very long time. And then now they keep on reading more about instructional design. And they're thinking about should I make this switch? Should I actually try to become this type of designer? And I've been trying to be able to do my best to answer this question. But of course, every single time my answer is always like, well, it depends. Like there's so much about your goals and where you're at and what you're doing and everything. But I
Yeah.
know how hard it is to become a professor. Like that is not easy at all in any way, shape, or form. Many of them have dedicated years upon years of their life with teaching and with research and with conferences and workshops. You name it. It takes forever to reach that type of a status, and then to be able to say, well, maybe I want to now transition into this job that's similar, but it's new. It's a different type of stepping stone. Why do you think people are willing to make this change? And just give me your thoughts around this as a professor, because this is still so mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I participated in the EIDL Courses Academy last summer, and there were many people who are coming from education and higher education specifically, who were we talked about this a lot. I think maybe I think the answer to this question is there's as many answers as there are people, because everyone's coming from a very different position. But one thing that makes me reflect is we've spent years trying to get to this place. And we spent years, and then, after you spend years and years doing something, maybe I don't want to say becomes boring, but maybe it becomes stale, or it's less of a challenge, or you're trying to figure out a way to stay motivated. And I wonder if that might be it. I feel like that's been it for me. Teaching the same or very similar courses for many years, and I love the material, but also I don't want to get bored, And if I'm teaching general education courses that the students don't want to be in this writing course, they don't want somebody who's bored with the material. So I wonder if maybe that's one of the reasons that so many people are looking towards instructional design. Not to mention the fact that teachers and professors and people in education have been really under the gun lately and gotten a lot of bad press, and people who are suspicious, or a lot is asked of, especially K-12 teachers. My goodness. And I wonder if maybe people are just kind of looking for something a little different for that reason too.
Oh yeah. So for K through 12, I completely understand why. Just Google teacher burnout, and you have all your answers where you're like, understand okay, nope. But what I learned though is that it's not just K through 12 teacher burnout. It's also instructor burnout, professor burnout, lecturer burnout, which is a real thing, which does not get as much attention, in my opinion, as compared to others, because I think a lot of people think of higher education as the promised land of like, how could you be bored? How could you be, suffering so much, where you're like, well, it's still a job, and every job has its pros and cons, and this isn't any different. It's just could potentially be a whirlwind of cons that maybe people aren't talking about enough.
Right.
But one person who was talking about it though, because I know from her firsthand experience, is actually you. Talking about with this type of instructor burnout, if you will. And that was actually, if memory served me correctly, that was your course project for Instructional Design Institute, was try to be able to help with this type of faculty burnout with everything. Tell me more about faculty burnout. Why is this happening? And how did your learning experience try to be able to help this out for them?
Why is this happening? Again, there's lots of answers to that question. I think one of the impetuses, is that the right plural? Impetus?
No, that's a tough word to say. Yeah.
One of the reasons, the pandemic really just kind of brought into focus what was already there, which was people being, feeling overwhelmed, just trying to help students. And when we had the pandemic, and suddenly we were asked not only to teach our courses, but to put everything online in a week or less, and to then help students navigate that transition, and to watch this life-altering societal change that was going on, and lots of unrest that was going on in society. And we were dealing with that, And we were processing that, and we were living with our families all in the house and, all together. And we were trying to help our students through that as well, because we wanted them to finish their semester if at all possible. And wow, it was exhausting. However, I don't think that the faculty burnout is only tied to the fallout of the pandemic. I think it's also about lots of people being asked to do lots of things that are not necessarily teaching, that they might get tired, or it's less invigorating than it is sitting in a classroom with students. And I think in higher ed, there's kind of a culture of we expect that people who are working in higher ed to be givers, to be servant leaders. and lots of people who are in higher ed stand up and say, yeah, I can do that. I know how to do that. I'd like to help. And it just, it's like you got one too many pieces of pizza on your plate. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, what am I going to do with all this? So I think that's definitely part of it. Faculty want to feel appreciated. We want to be seen. Teaching is not always visible labor. It's something that we are doing, we're preparing our courses, we're designing our courses, we're working with the learning outcomes, we're designing these things and planning them, and then we go into our classrooms, and most of the time, we're not being observed by colleagues or supervisors. And so we can share those experiences with each other, but it's hard to understand what that's like if you haven't gone through it. So consequently, the faculty are all kind of feeling like we're in the same boat, but we're not necessarily getting the understanding of what that is like from others. That's frustrating, and I think that has led to some burnout as well. So for the course, the Instructional Design Institute, I had been wrestling with all of this stuff, instructional design seems interesting to me, and wow, I've been teaching for a long time, and I want to be able to keep the motivation there, and oh my gosh, people are burned out all around me. And I had actually, the spring semester before taking the Instructional Design Institute, I had been approached by my dean, who knew that I had a love for faculty professional development and running workshops and things like this. And she talked to me about how she was seeing her faculty burned out. And she was talking to people and realizing that there's kind of a drag, and watching people work, burn the midnight oil and not getting enough sleep and all this kind of stuff. And she asked me what I thought that maybe we could do about it. And so we brainstormed some things, and we talked to some faculty, and we decided, one of the things that we've noticed at our college is that faculty professional development is often not attended in high numbers, and like it used to be. It's really kind of gone down, and we moved a lot of things online. I think that was maybe part of it, but people are really, really busy, and they're working on projects, and they're working on teaching, and they're giving students feedback and all this. And so we were having trouble getting faculty to come to workshops. And so we came up with the idea of maybe doing some micro lessons or micro courses that faculty could learn something, kind of one nugget at a time, in a brief, maybe 5 minutes once a week. Just like, here's one part about faculty burnout that you could maybe learn about. Like, what are the symptoms? Is this something you're experiencing? And so I actually applied for a grant and got a grant working with the course I developed for the Institute, and it's called Snapshots of Burnout Management. And we went with snapshots because we thought it was like, just a moment in time, just a quick picture, just a quick, 5 minutes here once a week. So I'm creating these micro lessons using the 7 Taps application, and putting that together with some optional discussion boards and a couple journal prompts, and a bunch of resources, things that I've read and listened to that I'm sharing with faculty. So I'm hoping we're launching this next week, and it's totally going to be ready. Everything's going to definitely be done by next week. But and so what I'm hoping is that this will be some way that people can engage with professional development in a way that fits their schedule. And it's not a pressure situation. It's kind of a low stakes thing. You can kind of come and go into the discussions, and I'm hoping it'll help people just even talk about it and be aware of that feeling of burnout, which is happening all over the country.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people too, and I hope that your course helps to enlighten people about this, because for a lot of folks, they don't recognize the fact that they're already burned out. It's kind of like there's this all of a sudden, like one day they're like, wow, I don't want to go to work. And you're like, so there must have been a sign in there somewhere that said that things aren't going that great. Is there something we can do to remedy this? And instead it's just like, oh no, like I'm hitting the wall. It's like, and you're done. And it's like, well, we can try to be able to do something to help with this. And certainly, I know from just personal experience too, you mentioned about just having conversations, discussions, or however you're going to be trying to do that. Just hearing that you're not alone is awesome. Because then you can confide in another person to be able to say like, oh my God, I had no idea you were feeling this way. I've been holding this in for 6 months. And finally, I have a buddy who we can just rant as we go on walks together at the office to be like, just what are you feeling today? You know, kind of someone to talk to about that, who also understands the culture, the environment, the everything, because that's that type of, I don't know, that interpersonal connection to be able to say that like, we're in this together. We can try to support each other. We can share tips. We can do something that hopefully that sparks that type of conversation for your folks.
There's a story very similar to what you're describing in the first chapter of Rebecca Pope Ruark's book called Unraveling Faculty Burnout. And she tells us a very similar story. It's a reflective piece for her. She tells her own story that she got to the place where she was just burned out, and she wanted to go and do a good job, but she couldn't figure out, finding the energy. I hope I'm not putting words in her mouth, but she's written a whole book about how to recognize it, how to normalize talking about it, and how to what kinds of strategies we can use. And gosh, a lot of times those strategies are things that many of us would say, oh yeah, well, of course. Yeah, I've got to sleep. Well, of course, it's important to have connections with people. But gosh, it can be so easy in the day-to-day life to forget to do that stuff, or to cross that off the calendar and replace it with something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to just get absorbed in your work. I mean, all of a sudden, before you know it, it's 5, it's 6, it's 7, and you're like, I was supposed to reach out to this person. I was supposed to have lunch with so-and-so. We didn't do it. A week later, 2 weeks later, and you kind of just keep on kicking the can down the road for that. So, yeah, that makes sense. Well, interesting. I've never heard that book before. I will put that in the show notes down below so that people can listen and be able to read more and try to be able to get some tips for that, because it's real. I'm glad there's at least a resource out there that you would recommend about this, because it definitely is growing. I think that is safe to say, as far as for how many people are being asked to do things. And while I think it's wonderful that we have more flexibility with online learning now more than ever, also understanding from the human perspective too, that these people need to be able to also now perhaps teach in a type of a format that they never planned on doing so before. They've never been trained on it, and they're also doing their face-to-face, and they're also doing their blah, blah, blah. And if we don't find
Sometimes
ways
doing both at the same time.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And if we don't have ways to support those folks, which that's usually is like the secret formula, surprise, surprise, you give them more help by being able to offer guidance and support and have someone take something off of a plate as far as for an actual support team, and then craft everything together. And that will definitely help to do the trick. But if not, and then they're like, why is no one watching my Zoom recording? It's like, well, it's unedited. No one can hear you. And it just doesn't look great. Right. Surprise. No one wants to watch that for an hour and a half. Like, wow, shocking turn of events. But there are ways of doing it, and doing it well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It makes sense. So what advice would you give to someone who has been a faculty member for quite some time, and they're thinking about actually really making this transition, not just learning about instructional design and picking up the pieces and putting it in their toolbox, but actually transitioning out into a whole different type of a career field? Do you have any recommendations or resources on what folks could do for their first steps if they're really thinking about doing this?
One of the things that I did was read your book, Things I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer by Dr. Luke Hobson.
Did not pay you to say that, but thank you.
No, that's a really good resource because it looks at what instructional design actually is, which is a million different things, but it looks at all the different sort of aspects of that career field and asks the reader, are you sure this is what you want to do? Is this what you want to sign up for? And if so, great, then you can move forward. So that was really helpful to me. And listening to podcasts of instructional designers. And as I mentioned earlier, I went into the IDLE Courses Academy, which is Instructional Design and Online Learning Academy. And I did that last summer in 22. And it was kind of a crash course. It was really crafted well for adult learners because it allowed us to kind of choose our own path and decide, because it gave us an overview, it gave us a crash course, the do it messy approach that Dr. Robin Sargent talks about. But also there's different pathways within that. So if you really wanted to focus on the development of online spaces, that would be great. Or if you really want to focus on more technology, software and apps and things like that. Or, there's lots of different pathways. And that is similar to the Instructional Design Institute that I enrolled in with you this past spring and summer?
I was going to say, when did that? Everything's a blur with time. I don't remember anything anymore.
Time is weird. I learned that during the pandemic too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But that was a similar content, but it was focused really on higher education, and that was really helpful. Also, I would give a shout out to Sarah Canistra. Did I say that right? Canistra?
Yes. Yeah.
She talks about finding your niche and figuring out what it is you want to do exactly with instructional design. And then also, I know, Luke, that we talked about this in the Institute, but I've heard about it in other places too, and that is, what is it that you want to do? What instructional design means so many different things to different people. It could be about assessing the needs and designing a course, or it could be about developing going through Addie here. It could be about developing the actual experiences, or it could be about implementing it and doing the training. And all of those, I feel like, fall under the umbrella of instructional design, even though they're quite different.
Yes. So first, shout out to both former podcast guests. Robin and Sarah have both been on the show, and IDLE was a sponsor of the show. So shout out to all around for everything. When it comes to instructional design, you're absolutely right. Depending upon what type of domain you are going to be falling into, it could be in several different types of things, or it could be specifically one very niche area that, like, this person is only going to be doing e-learning development. This person is only going to be primarily focusing on more along the lines of the research and the analysis. This person is actually going to be doing more of the blueprint and the course mapping and the actual putting that all together, but then they hand it off to a team who then goes and builds it inside of a learning management system. There's a million different avenues within instructional design. And the one thing to piggyback off of everything you were just saying too is that you do not need to also just go into only instructional design, which that's the hot, the two hot words right now where everyone is saying is just like, all right, instructional designer. And it's like, yes, but there are a million job titles that all could mean a variety of things pertaining to learning, design, project management, relationship management, technology, research. It very much all depends. And the one area that I have been talking about with more folks who are like this, of like the tenure professors who are really thinking about kind of making this change, is that the jump doesn't need to be so drastic as one might think. There are some roles out there that do have elements of both teaching and learning, which, if that is a part of this process, I think that'd be a whole heck of a lot easier compared to this, like, throwing yourself inside of a corporate instructional design position and being like, okay, here we go. I'm starting from scratch, kind of a thing. Which, and I'm not sure if you looked into this at all about these different various places, but I think about teaching and learning centers. they're everywhere. For so many universities and colleges have these teaching and learning centers, and when you look at jobs in those places, you can see some different types of titles where you're like, okay, what is this? And you read it and you're like, oh, okay. So I'm going to be hosting the workshops and trying to be able to help with teaching faculty about how to actually go and do these different forms of learning strategies and to act this type of out. And at the same time, I get to actually go and build some of the courses online and do whatever. And you get these various mixed elements that go inside of some of the things. So it doesn't need to just be only instructional design. Period. You're done. You're moving on. There's a couple of other different options that for folks who have more of that teaching background, maybe that would be better suited for them. So,
Yeah. And I think that I want to be careful with the way I phrase this, but I do think that professors who have worked in higher education do have lots of transferable skills that can be used in an instructional design environment. I want to be careful because I don't want to imply that it's a one-for-one trade-off. I know that the environment and the type of organization and all of that matters a great deal. But there are things that we as instructors do that are similar to what is happening in, whether it's corporate or nonprofit or higher ed, instructional design. And I guess I would suggest to people that they look at those kinds of things, maybe I don't have a project management certification, but when I teach 5 classes a semester in the community college, I'm managing 5 different projects simultaneously with lots of people involved and lots of data involved. And that's something that we talked about in the IDLE courses. How can we take what we already are doing and maybe think of it through an instructional design lens or a different way of, instructional design or training or faculty mentoring or whatever it is that you're looking to go into.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. I also do not have any form of project management certificate, by the way. It can be helpful, don't get me wrong, but if that is preventing you from trying to do something, I would keep on pushing through. And literally like what you just said, you are managing projects. You are thinking about these perspectives as far as the amount of things that I think about from a financial perspective that I didn't realize I was doing as far as with budgeting and whatnot, where I'm like, oh no, I need to make sure that I'm under budget. And oh yes, I'm accounting for making sure that we're staffing these people and doing this thing. And it's like, oh, okay, budget management. Oh, okay, so I'm going to, all right, add that to that resume. And okay, here we go. And keep on, the more you talk it out, the more you think about it, the more skills you're like, yeah, I've done a lot. Okay, I need to, make sure I'm actually representing this instead of just saying, which I always see from people where they say on their resume, they're like, I taught 5 courses, period. I'm like, and then what? Hey, there's more to it than just you stood in front of a class and lectured, but that's what that says. You gotta unpack that here for me. I need to know more.
But someone who has taught a bunch of courses has done all of these things. They've looked at learning outcomes, and they've figured out how to attach assignments and activities to those learning outcomes, and they're designing things, and they're developing materials, and they're providing resources, and they're mentoring students, and they're providing feedback, and it just kind of goes on and on.
Yes,
Those are all things that happen in the instructional design space within a different environment.
Yes, it's that different lens and that perspective and trying to be able to, and once again, as you mentioned too, to make sure to really hammer this home, it is definitely not a one-for-one. If it was, then this would be a completely different conversation. You always got to keep on building upon your skills. But the point is that you're building upon skills. You have the skills. We're building upon them. It's a clean slate and you got nothing and here we go. So that's just a clear distinction. You mentioned that you've been involved inside of faculty professional development and that you really loved being able to do that. How did you approach bringing instructional designing learning experiences into that kind of world?
One thing is I thought about adult learners and adult learning theories, andragogy. And thought about, I have folks who are coming to the faculty development workshops that they're not coming in with a clean slate. They've got lots of background, lots of experiences. So let's see how we can draw that out right from the beginning, whether it's something that they share with the group before the event starts or whether it's something that we talk about during the event. Everybody has experiences and wisdom that they can share with the others just based on where they come from. So that's one thing, because, faculty come into a room and it's kind of strange, because I've gone to learning workshops, or I've been the member of an institute or a class, and all of a sudden I'm the student. I'm like, whoa, I haven't been in this position for a long time. And faculty, one thing that we never have trouble with in faculty workshops is getting people to talk and share, because most faculty are pretty darn willing to do that. But, if we can provide connections to where they came from, and an awareness of how what we're doing at that workshop or seminar or webinar, how that impacts them. How can you go back and use that? That's really useful. And I learned a lot of that, was covered in the instructional design, the institutes and the books and webinars and things that I've mentioned, or podcasts, not webinars. So yeah, and then also just really thinking of the design process, like backwards design. Like, okay, I'm meeting with these faculty for faculty best practices. What, right after, let's see, it was in fall, or I guess August of 2020. That's when I started as faculty professional development coordinator. And we had always had, in August, faculty best practices workshop, where everybody came together. We were in the auditorium, and we started with coffee, and then we had presentations, and we talked, and lunch, and this whole thing. Well, we couldn't do that in August of 2020. And I took what I had learned from being a participant in some online conferences, and I turned that into, all right, we're having faculty best practices online this year. And it was really useful to think about, okay, what backwards design, what do I want people to get out of this? Well, for one thing, we just wanted to socialize and talk with one another, because we had been isolated for a long time. Another is, how do we get back into the rhythm, or how do we try to get back to some sense of normal, or some sense of whatever this is going to be now? And, just thinking about those. And then I could kind of design things in reverse. Like, all right, well, how could we get there? And I ended up using faculty, whereas in the past we would have faculty delivering in-person presentations. I reached out to faculty who I knew had good things to share, or people who had volunteered, and I said, okay, we're doing this online. How would you feel about putting together a brief presentation? And some of them delivered it live, and some of them recorded videos, and then we just played the videos. And then we broke out into groups, into breakout rooms, so that everyone could, have a smaller group to talk and have that social connection, but also be talking about strategies, teaching strategies, and troubleshooting obstacles and challenges. And that was a really exciting event. It went really well. And I definitely used what I had learned from instructional design when I was putting that together.
Yeah, it makes plenty of sense. I mean, and once again, thank you for the shout out. Of course, I feel like I need to say thank you like many times if you keep on mentioning things. But I love that. And I'm sure your faculty also love the fact, too, that when we can share about something that we're super proud of, that was awesome, that worked really well, it's like you want to tell other people. And it's just like, yeah, I want to show off how great my students are. Look at what they did. It's like, look, this thing actually worked. I tried this thing. It really did well. And of course, as you mentioned, too, we can use backward design for anything.
Mm-hmm, like, I know.
You can reverse engineer any kind of problem. And if we actually approach it from a little bit more of a learning perspective type of a thing, then yeah, it can be used for anything that you want to be able to do. So I always love when someone goes into a meeting and they're like, all right, folks, the goal of this meeting is to do da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, thank you. We have a goal. Let's hit this goal. It was half an hour, or else we're just gonna keep on rambling on, and this meeting will never end. Like let's focus here. So
meetings that could have been emails.
all the time, everything. Yes. Always.
But yeah, that absolutely. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we together? Let's because then we can tell when we're done or when we've come to a stopping point. So all that is great too. Yeah, I like to do that in classes with students. Here's what our focus is today, and this is what I hope you get out of this class period today. And then whether we're face to face or Zooming or online, they have some goals to work towards.
Yep, exactly. It makes a lot of sense. You mentioned to me previously, and you mentioned actually earlier on this episode too, is that you've been talking about teaching your own courses for children's literature and composition.
Yes.
tell me about this and this crossover with all the other things you've been doing. How did this come together?
How did I find time to teach?
I mean, how did you do like it's just so funny because like this whole time it's just like we're talking about with adults and we're talking about faculty burnout and everything. But then also you were like, oh, by the way, Luke, I'm also teaching courses for children's literature and composition and we're doing the things and the stuff. And it's like, okay, tell me more. What are you, what's going on with this?
So you know what I have found myself doing as I plan my courses is making a course map. Like I would do for instructional design, where I say, all right, here's the goal and here's all the content that needs to be covered because it's in the course description. So how can I chunk that and organize it and put it into pieces that work together and that make some sense? And then I connect that with what kinds of content will I be providing to them and how will they be assessed, excuse me, so that I can see if they've learned. And I also bring in excuse me, a lot of assessments that aren't required for students. Like I'm just asking them, like the anonymous survey of what have we been doing so far this semester that has been really helpful for you? Or what have we not been doing that you really wish we would do? And using that, and that I find is emphasized with instructional design as well, because we want to know if the things that we're putting out there are doing any good or doing what they are meant to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, and we do all this all the time as far as for making sure that we do have things as far as for with practice questions of things that aren't graded as well. And I know it's also another passion area of yours too, just by knowing you, is that we were talked before about ungrading before coming on into this podcast. And that's something to me that I'm seeing more people use, which makes me very happy because as I've been, teaching and doing this for quite some time too, talking about instructional design and all this other stuff, it always seems that people are surprised where they're like, wait a second, not every single thing has a grade. I'm like, I know. Why would it? I don't know. Like, I want you to be able to practice and fail in a safe space. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're being evaluated on every single thing you do. You need to be able to kind of build up that momentum with everything, or else it's not going to work.
Grading everything, especially in a high stakes kind of environment, is not the way to encourage learning. Because to learn something, we have to take a risk and we have to make a mistake. And sometimes we have to completely fail at it, or we just have to, not do part of it well, so that somebody can say to us, I'm noticing I'm noticing this gap. And have you thought about trying it this way? Or have you learned about that? Or, when I was a kid, I learned how to play the organ. And, sometimes you just completely don't understand what the music you're reading. You have to kind of fail at it for the teacher to say, okay, let's try that again. And it's just like when you learn anything, when you learn how to cook something, you try a new recipe for the first time and it's really good. And then you try it again and it's not good. And you have to try to figure out what was different. And if that is going to happen in our classrooms, students can't be worried about making a mistake. They can't, if every single thing is graded and is going towards the final course grade, which then affects their GPA and their financial aid, and sometimes, whether their employer will reimburse them for that tuition, or whether their family will continue to support their efforts at getting a degree. They need some space to be able to really take chances. And so that's how I got into ungrading. Ungrading is kind of a misnomer because it sounds like it means don't ever grade anything at all, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. But institutions of higher education need grades. But ungrading is really it's a collection of alternative assessment strategies where we can make space for students to try and fail and try again and get better. So sometimes it means not grading anything at all, or sometimes it means having a certain series of assignments that only get feedback. They don't get points or letters or anything like that. Because that's a whole nother conversation. But, the history of grading and higher education.
Oh, yeah. That's a very deep conversation.
That's totally something different. But that is not in place because of how people learn. It's in place because of tradition and history and sort of where we came from. So yeah, I got into ungrading, and I tried experimenting with it. Like I just used 1 or 2 assignments in my classes that I didn't give points to, and then students said, "What? I don't know how to deal with this. What do you mean?" But doing that really helps students and any learner to focus on what they're learning and what they still need to know, to kind of direct their own learning in ways, as opposed to having the teacher direct it, but to having them say, okay, here's how I think that this is important. Here's how I might use it. And I want to learn X, Y, and Z for these reasons. Yeah,
Exactly.
there might be also required content that they have to cover, but if they can find a purpose in it, then that helps them stay motivated.
Oh yeah, there's always ways about going this. The funny thing is that for some of the courses that I took previously as a kid and eventually into college too, I was always so surprised when my professors or my teachers would allow me to do a first draft and it wasn't graded. And I, of course, as like a delinquent, I was just like, not gonna do it. It's a draft. And then now, as an adult, I put that in my courses for my adult students to say, no, this is a draft. Like, you're going to get points just for the sake that you push the submit button and there's a thing. But I'm just going to give you feedback because I just want to see how it went. And then, of course, as you wait a couple of weeks and you keep on learning more and you keep on applying what you've been learning about into the next draft or the polished version, it's going to be mind-blowing to see what you submitted week 2. And then week 7, you're like, whoa, this is so much better now. Like, I've learned so much. It's like, yeah, that's the point. Like, we can do this.
Yeah, it needs to be reflective. Then learners can think like, well, what they look back at that thing they wrote in week 2 and they think, I can't believe I turned that in.
Exactly.
But if they can identify why and what they have done or what they've learned since or what they would continue to do if they had more time, that's learning. That's where the learning comes in. So I just lost my train of thought. But it was going to be a really good point.
Oh, it's going to be the best point ever. I mean, obviously. The point is, if you are not yet dabbling of ungrading and thinking more about just simply not assigning points inside of your online class or your in-person class or whatnot, I would certainly recommend it.
Or just de-emphasizing
Yeah.
even doing that makes a difference. And there's some disciplines where it's impossible to not grade anything because people are going through certifications or they're, meeting state standards or something like that for a program. But that doesn't mean everything has to be graded. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Awesome, Stephanie. Well, let's wrap up with that point for folks. So give them some homework to be able to do some deep dives into things. Where can people go to learn more about you and what it is that you do?
Well, they can certainly email, and I've shared my email. They can look at my portfolio, which I have online, which I originally started as part of the IDLE Academy and have continued to add to and take away from and redesign and it's a living document, So I can provide that link. It's stepaniekratz@gmail.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is kind of a mess. That's a whole nother thing to do, to go into LinkedIn and try to take who you are and what you believe and put it out there in a way that makes sense. So those are all things that they can look at.
Awesome. Well, as always, I'll just keep on putting links inside of the show notes so people can go and follow you. But Stepanie, once again, thank you so much for being here, sharing your words of wisdom. I know this episode is going to be helping out a lot of people. So thanks again for being here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And of course, as Stepanie mentioned a couple of seconds ago, be sure to connect with her. That was actually one thing that I was telling her and really every guest who's ever come on this show. What I love at the end is people always say they want to be able to connect with those of you who listen to this podcast. And I always give a bit of a funny warning to be able to say, just so you know, these people, they will reach out to you because they're awesome. They're action oriented and they actually want to connect with you to learn more, discuss about different types of opportunities. And without fail, every single time a guest comes on this show, I will hear from them a couple of days later and they were like, your listeners actually do connect and they want to be able to learn more. They want to be able to discuss about things. And I'm like, yeah, because the people that listen to this show, they are awesome. The Learning Nerd community is strong and it's only growing stronger every single day. So not only do I appreciate you actually listening to this show and of course paying attention, but obviously you treat our guests with so much care and respect. And it's just awesome that you actually follow through to be able to talk more with them. So being able to have those connections, those networking opportunities, those virtual coffee chats, it's a fantastic thing. So have to give a shout out to all of you who listen to this episode. Of course, if you do like this episode, give it a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. I am not picky. And of course, I always appreciate your reviews. And last but not least too, Stephanie did talk quite a bit about Instructional Design Institute because she was a member of our first cohort and discussing about designing learning experiences, talking about faculty burnout, and all the other different types of various things that she was going through inside of the first cohort. If that is something that you want to be able to go through along your own learning nerd journey and experience our instructional design bootcamp, the next cohort is opening up again August 28th. Not that far away, only a couple of days from now, which is actually insane how fast time is going. Anyway, apply today, enroll. If you have any questions, of course, please feel free, email me. Luke@drlukehobson.com is the best way to get a hold of me. And if you haven't yet already done so, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn or for anything else. But hey, folks, that's all I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there. Talk to you next time.